There are moments in history when a single people rise so high they make the mighty tremble. Not because they wield weapons or armies, but because they carry brilliance in their minds, courage in their hearts, and fire in their dreams. That is the story of the Indian spirit in the halls of Google, in the towers of Microsoft, and in every corner where innovation breathes. When a leader looks at India's sons and daughters, he sees a force that moves quietly, yet shakes the ground it walks on. There is something far more formidable than military might or economic sanctions. It is the sheer brilliance of the human mind when it is sharpened by discipline, tested by struggle, and fueled by vision. No wall, no border, no policy can hold back the current of thought that flows from such minds. This is not a fear of bodies crossing boundaries. It is the unease of knowing that no matter how many doors are locked, ideas will always find a way in. The mind that builds, imagines, and transforms can pass through any barrier because its currency is not physical presence, but intellectual power. Every time an Indian innovator stands at the cutting edge of technology, every time an Indian scientist unveils a new discovery, and every time an Indian entrepreneur turns a dream into a global enterprise, it chips away at the illusion that dominance belongs to any one nation forever. The fear comes from a recognition, an unspoken admission, that these minds are not content to simply follow paths already carved by others. They create new ones. They disrupt markets, redefine industries, and sometimes even change the very language of the future. When a Sundar Pichai decides how billions will connect through search and software, or when a Satya Nadella shapes how the world works, learns, and communicates, they are not just running companies. They are steering the future. And when this future is shaped by people who do not carry the same national flag, it unsettles those who once assumed that they alone would set the course. This power is not accidental. It is the fruit of generations who believed that education was not merely a privilege but a duty. In villages where light bulbs were scarce, books still found their way into the hands of children. In cities where competition was fierce, young minds learn to endure, to adapt, and to strive higher. This discipline creates a quiet confidence, the kind that doesn't need to shout its worth, because it proves itself in results. Leaders who look at the steady rise of Indian excellence in global companies see that this is not a temporary wave, it is a tide that will keep coming. It is also a fear of scale. For every individual who has reached the top of the global stage, there are countless others in the pipeline honing their skills, sharpening their intellect, and preparing to make their mark. These minds are in classrooms, research labs, co-working spaces, and garages across the world. They are not bound by geography, they belong to the future. A warning to Google or Microsoft is not simply a statement to corporations, it is an acknowledgement that the talent shaping these giants is increasingly Indian, and that influence is only set to grow. It is here that fear turns to something deeper. A realization that dominance in the coming century will not be dictated by who has the largest army or the most natural resources, but by who has the greatest capacity to think, adapt, and innovate. That is where the Indian mind stands as both a competitor and a beacon. It is a force that cannot be bought or bullied, because it runs on something that cannot be taken away. The belief that knowledge, once earned, is freedom. And that kind of freedom is unstoppable. Every coder, engineer, and visionary standing in the tech capitals of the world carries more than just skills. They carry a heritage shaped by centuries of reverence for knowledge. The story begins long before they enter corporate boardrooms or lead groundbreaking projects. It begins in small classrooms where teachers were treated like guides, not employees. It begins in households where a book was as valuable as a treasure and where learning was not seen as an option but as the foundation of life itself. This deep-rooted respect for education has been passed from one generation to the next, creating a chain of minds committed to growth, perseverance, and excellence. Even in times when resources were scarce, the pursuit of learning was never abandoned. Families made sacrifices so their children could attend better schools, receive quality training, and chase dreams beyond the horizon. This cultural legacy becomes a quiet yet unshakable advantage. While others may chase quick rewards, The Indian approach often values preparation over instant gratification. Long hours of study, rigorous examinations, and the relentless honing of skills are not just habits. They are traditions. When these individuals step into global industries, they bring with them the discipline of generations, the patience to endure challenges, and the vision to look beyond short-term gains. That is why in competitive environments, whether it's Silicon Valley or research labs across Europe, they not only survive but thrive. This is not about individual brilliance alone. It's about a collective mindset that understands the value of building from the ground up. Knowledge is seen not as a tool to simply earn a living but as a force that can shape futures, communities, and even nations. When a country produces millions of graduates each year who are fluent not just in academic knowledge, but in adaptability, it becomes a reservoir of talent that the world cannot ignore. This is why companies like Google and Microsoft are not just hiring from India, they are depending on Indian minds to lead. That dependency creates both admiration and fear in those who once believed they alone would set the standard. It is also about the adaptability that comes from growing up in a nation of contrasts. Navigating diversity in language, culture, and opportunity trains people to think in multiple dimensions. They learn to adjust quickly, to find creative solutions, and to work within constraints without losing sight of the bigger goal. When such individuals enter the global tech arena, they stand out for their ability to see challenges not as roadblocks, but as puzzles waiting to be solved. This adaptability is as much a product of India's educational ethos as it is of its everyday realities. When a leader from another nation looks at this, they recognize the implications. If the roots of this educational strength run this deep, then the future will bear fruit in abundance. And that fruit will not just feed one nation's ambitions, it will nourish global progress. That is where the fear sets in, because a foundation built over centuries cannot be dismantled overnight. It means that the rise of Indian talent is not a passing trend but an inevitable progression. For every Indian CEO making headlines today, there are thousands more quietly preparing to take their place tomorrow. The world has already begun to shift, and those who once stood at the top are beginning to realize they may no longer be the ones leading the climb. There is a quiet revolution unfolding in the highest offices and most influential meeting rooms of the world. It does not come with the noise of protests or the spectacle of rallies, but with the steady, deliberate work of Indian leaders, shaping billion-dollar strategies and guiding industries into the future. This revolution is made of minds that have climbed from humble beginnings to the pinnacles of power, not through inheritance or political privilege, but through sheer competence, resilience, and vision. When Sundar Pichai decides how Google will expand its reach into new technologies or markets, or when Satya Nadella redefines the way Microsoft approaches innovation and inclusivity, they are not just running companies, they are influencing the very framework of the digital age. These leaders carry an approach that blends technical brilliance with human understanding. They do not see technology as cold machinery, but as a living, evolving tool to empower people. This perspective comes from a background rooted in diversity and complexity, where solving problems is as much about understanding human needs as it is about mastering systems. In the boardrooms of Silicon Valley, London, or Singapore, this philosophy stands out. It is subtle, but it changes the tone of decisions, reshapes corporate cultures, and redirects the trajectory of entire industries. The presence of such leaders is not accidental. It is the result of decades of producing talent capable of excelling anywhere in the world. When they enter these top positions, they bring with them teams, networks, and a cultural mindset that values long-term impact over short-term noise. They are not there to simply maintain systems, they are there to reinvent them. This level of influence is what unsettles those who once assumed global leadership would always be shaped by a narrow group of nations and individuals. What makes this revolution even more remarkable is its quiet nature. There is no need for grand declarations or overt challenges to the status quo. The transformation happens in small decisions. The restructuring of a department, the investment in emerging technology, the shift in a company's hiring policies to embrace more global talent. Over time, these decisions accumulate into something monumental. They redefine market dynamics and open doors for talent from places once overlooked. And in doing so, they weaken the old systems of control that were built to favor only a select few. The fear this inspires is not simply about who holds the top positions today. It is about what this shift signals for tomorrow. If Indian leaders can rise quietly to run two of the most influential tech companies in the world, then it is only a matter of time before they are at the helm of many more. This is a ripple effect. One leader inspires 1,000 others, and each of those opens the way for countless more. In the corridors of global power, this realization cannot be ignored. When a leader like Trump warns companies such as Google or Microsoft, the surface message might be about economics or national interest. But beneath it lies a deeper acknowledgement that the decision-making tables of the future may not look the same as they do today. Power is shifting, and it is shifting toward those who earned it through merit, skill, and persistence. This quiet revolution may not make the loudest noise, but it is rewriting the rules of who leads, who decides, and who shapes the destiny of the digital world. One of the most unsettling realities for those who hold power is the rise of individuals who succeed without needing their permission or approval. There is a deep, almost unspoken fear in watching people from once marginalized or underestimated nations stand on equal footing with the most privileged in the world. When the children of a land once colonized now command global empires of technology, finance, and innovation, they do more than just prove their own worth. They dismantle centuries-old narratives that suggested greatness was the birthright of only a few. This is the threat of example, a force far more influential than any speech or campaign, because it is living proof that the impossible can be made real. The Indian presence at the forefront of global technology serves as a constant reminder of this truth. It tells every young person from a small town, from a remote village, from a family with modest means, that the summit is within reach. It says that brilliance is not the property of any single nation, that opportunity can be claimed, not just granted. This message spreads like wildfire, igniting ambition in places that were once ignored by the world stage. Those who have built their power on keeping others in the shadows feel that heat, and it makes them uneasy. There is a particular discomfort in knowing that these successes are not built on luck or fleeting trends, but on skill, discipline, and vision. You cannot dismiss them as anomalies when they happen again and again. The rise of Indian talent in companies like Google and Microsoft is not a single spark. It is a chain reaction. Each new achievement adds credibility to the next, creating a momentum that is almost impossible to stop. For those who have long enjoyed dominance, it is daunting to realize that the next wave of global leadership may emerge from places they once thought peripheral. This example has a ripple effect that extends far beyond the tech industry. It influences how education is pursued, how careers are built, and how dreams are shaped across continents. A student in Africa, Southeast Asia, or Latin America can look at these stories and say, if they can, so can I. That shift in belief is powerful enough to change the trajectory of entire communities. And that is where the real threat lies. Because when enough people start believing they can rise, the systems built to keep them down begin to crack. The fear is amplified by the fact that this example crosses borders effortlessly. It does not matter if someone is working in Bangalore, San Francisco, or London. The story is the same. Skill, persistence, and determination lead to success. This universality means that the message cannot be contained or controlled. Leaders who once relied on national pride as a tool to maintain dominance are now faced with a global reality where the playing field is being leveled by competence, not geography. It is also a challenge to the very idea of who gets to lead. If leadership can come from anywhere, then the old gatekeepers no longer decide the rules. That loss of control is more frightening than any competition in the marketplace. The warning to companies like Google and Microsoft is not just about protecting national interests. It is a thinly veiled reaction to the undeniable shift in who will shape the future. And as more Indian innovators rise, their example will continue to inspire others to break through every barrier that once seemed immovable. This fear is not really about the present moment, it is about the horizon that stretches ahead, a horizon where the balance of innovation and influence is tilting toward new hands. The anxiety comes from imagining a future where Indian ingenuity is not just a part of the global technology ecosystem, but a driving force behind its most transformative leaps. Artificial intelligence, quantum computing, biotechnology, space exploration, these are not just buzzwords. They are the battlegrounds of the next century, and Indian minds are already planting their flags there. The warning to Google and Microsoft is less about today's market share and more about tomorrow's dominance, about who will define the rules and reap the rewards when the next great technological revolutions arrive. In boardrooms and think tanks, the awareness is growing that this wave of Indian talent is not a passing phase. It is sustained, self-reinforcing, and deeply embedded in both domestic and international pipelines of education and industry. Universities across the world are filled with Indian students topping their fields. Research labs are staffed with Indian scientists pushing the boundaries of what is possible. Startups in Bangalore, Hyderabad, and Pune are building products and platforms that compete with, and sometimes outpace, those from the world's most established tech hubs. This is not a temporary spike in achievement, it is the steady rise of a new standard. The fear sharpens when one realizes that this growth is accelerated by a globalized network of collaboration. Indian innovators are not working in isolation. They are partnered with experts from every corner of the planet, absorbing new ideas while contributing fresh perspectives. This creates a dynamic exchange where solutions emerge faster, more efficiently, and with greater cultural adaptability than in more insular systems. The future is not just being built in one country anymore. It is being woven together by a diverse set of minds, with Indians increasingly at the center of that weave. For those who have long equated technological leadership with political and economic control, this shift is deeply unsettling. If India's influence in technology grows unchecked, it will naturally extend into diplomacy, trade, and global policy. The power to set technological standards often comes with the power to shape international rules and norms. Imagine an era where digital infrastructure, cybersecurity frameworks, and even space protocols are shaped heavily by Indian vision. For some, that is a future filled with promise. For others clinging to old hierarchies, it is a future they would rather delay. This is why the warnings come dressed as economic caution or national security concern. Beneath the surface lies the recognition that the baton of leadership may soon pass. It is an acknowledgement, however reluctant, that the future is not owned by those who held the past. And in that acknowledgement is an unspoken question. Once this shift is complete, will the new leaders extend the same opportunities to others that they themselves fought so hard to claim? For India, the path forward is clear. The combination of technical expertise, global collaboration, and a relentless drive for improvement forms an engine that will be difficult to stall. The young innovators of today will become the decision makers of tomorrow, and their influence will ripple through every industry that touches human life. Those who fear this change may attempt to slow it, but history shows that once the momentum of progress is set in motion, it rarely reverses. The sun is rising in places some never expected it to, and no amount of warning can hold back its light.